Hello and welcome to the Innovative People's Podcast, the podcast that is shedding more light on the works of people and groups that are adding light and colour to our communities. We are here today in Leicester to speak with organisers of the 16-day Art Exposition, an exhibition about domestic violence happening now until 10th of December. Can you introduce yourself, please, and share the inspiration behind the organising of the Expression of Freedom Arts Exposition?
Hi, yes, thank you. My name is Emily Corrigan and I'm Head of Fundraising for Living Without Abuse, which is a local charity supporting victims of domestic abuse and or sexual violence in Leicestershire. So Expression of Freedom has been running for 3 years. Originally it set up in Colville. Last year it was showcased in High Cross Leicester, and this year we're exhibiting in High Cross Leicester, in Colville and Loughborough. The inspiration behind it, it's a collaboration between Leicestershire County and Leicester City Councils, and the aim is to give victims and survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence a voice through the medium of the arts. So for around 12 to 16 weeks, we've had groups of survivors working with artists to produce a whole range of artworks, including conventional drawings and paintings, but also sculptures, poetry, creative writing.
All right. This is the third year, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. How did the collaboration with Leicester Community and the City and the Council, how did that come about for this event?
So originally this was an initiative developed by the council, so the county and city councils together. And last year, Living Without Abuse was involved together with some other organisations in the city. The council had a chat with our CEO because they were really struggling with resource, and so Living Without Abuse offered to organise it for this year's event.
As we delve into the significance of the exhibition, can you please elaborate on the role that this has in raising awareness for domestic abuse?
Okay, so I think many people are familiar with campaigns and initiatives where we talk about statistics, we talk about data, we talk about the impact of domestic abuse, but in really rather sort of research-based terms. So the importance of this particular exhibition is that we are showcasing the voice of the survivor and the voice of the victim. So it gives visitors to the exhibition the ability to understand and feel the impact of domestic abuse through the lived experience of survivors.
What would you say that attendees can come to expect when they come visit during the 16 days?
Okay, I think our visitors are able to see a wide range of different art forms, but also of expressions of emotion through these different art forms. So some of our survivors have been extraordinarily articulate through written word. Some of them came to us saying that they couldn't possibly write poetry, and yet we have some really amazing poems on being showcased. We've got things ranging from feeling safe groups from a primary school through to multi-language poetry and artwork, through to sculptures. So there's a real wide range of art pieces that I think everyone will find something with which they resonate.
Some sort of connection to be made to them.
Exactly.
How do you envision the impact of all these exhibitions, the poems and the art? How do you, for the broader community?
So I think we're here, I think on day 10, we've already had more than 2,000 visitors come through the doors to experience Expression of Freedom. And I think it will have multiple impacts. We have a feedback board where people have been leaving their comments, and I think that is an illustration of the impact that it's having. Yesterday we had someone leave the comment, "Thank you for showing me that I'm not alone." So we'll have visitors coming here who probably are currently going through an abusive situation, so they will be able to be reassured that they're not on their own, and also be able to find help and understand that the support at Colville last week, we had someone come through who was in an abusive situation. She hadn't talked about it and was able to connect with one of our outreach workers on the spot. We will also have practitioners coming through who are working with abuse survivors, and I think it will be very useful for them to hear lived experience. We had somebody come from a local college where there are a number of trainee social workers, and he said he was going to bring down some of the students because it would be very informative for them. And then, of course, there's the general public, although we'll have people coming in who haven't directly been impacted by domestic abuse, because 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men will experience domestic abuse in their lifetime. You can guarantee that everyone coming through the doors, even though they might not know it, knows somebody who is going through this right now. And I'm hoping that it will allow people to be empathetic. It will change maybe perceptions of what domestic abuse is, and it will be a great awareness raiser.
So that's the message and the emotions you want people to leave, is the people who aren't necessarily directly involved can empathise more with the people
Yes.
that they know, and the people that are directly involved will maybe consider that they have got a voice and that they can come forward.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And lastly, for those interested in participating or attending, where can they find more information about this?
Okay, so probably the best place to go to is the Living Without Abuse website. So just go and Google Living Without Abuse, and there's information on the website. Also, if you follow Living Without Abuse on social media, we're posting daily about the exhibition, including details of where you can come and find us at each location. And also, if they email Living Without Abuse, either email me directly, emily@lwa.org.uk. I can provide further information. And also for people who might want to get involved in the future, please get in touch. We'd love to have you involved in the collaboration.
Hi, I'm here with Elaine Robinson. Could you please introduce yourself to the camera?
Yeah, hi, I'm Elaine Robinson, an artist based in Bristol. And
He's going to be talking to us about these families, this one family that have been living with abuse. And there are different art exhibitions here where they each have their own story to tell. So what's going on here? On this
so I was invited by Living Without Abuse charity to work alongside families where the person who was abused or perpetrated was still choosing to live with the family, and they wanted to work together, which is unusual because very often when you hear about abuse, the family breaks down, there's no communication. And so it was an honour to be asked, really. So on the first day, I was with the mother and the child. The elder child chose not to come on that particular day. So here we've got, and we wanted to explore past, present and future. So it wasn't about the creativity or how good it was or whatever. It was processing emotion, really. So we could work with something.
Writing them feelings down on paper.
And everyone could be interlinked and on the same page. So it was quite difficult to know how we were going to do that, but we also needed to know that we could move it around. It was going to be accessible and understood. So this is the mother's in this particular situation. So she worked with her present and she recognised that she needed help. So she reached out for help and support, children and family wellbeing services, and etc., etc. And then I asked her to explore her past. And of course, you can see here, she's depicted herself as very sad, and her partner is there, and the children. And then the ideal future, she wants to go off with her family. She called herself a survivor in a camper van exploring. And what was really huge in her dialogue was that she didn't want any beer because she knew alcohol was the root of a lot of their problems, really, because it played out with all the families. So here you've got the man and boy, he called himself, 11 years old. So we started with this present, and everyone seems to be working, communicating. And then here you see you've got angry. And he also said to me that he used to run to his bedroom with his dog to hide whenever things became uncomfortable. And then in his future, his dreams of coming alive again, he wants to be a football player. Is that Man? I think that's Man City, isn't it?
I don't know.
I'm not 100%. But anyway, he wants to be a famous footballer.
We all want to be a footballer, because I know I did.
Yeah. So that's really beautiful. And there was a lot of emotions, very heightened emotions about the past. But really, everybody left the room feeling really positive. So the next day, the father worked with us, and we explored his present to begin with, because you wanted him to feel secure as well. And so he's referenced it with a traffic light system. And he knows, to stop and think about his behaviours, to start to take responsibility and think and slow down, and then to use the services around. Turning Point, I think, is an alcohol support organisation. To think positive, little steps, small steps. He's aware of what he needs to do. We explored the past just in terms of him taking some responsibility, so he's able to recognise the triggers, so that his family doesn't break down again, really. So what he used to do was shout, hit, shove, drink alcohol. So he recognises his triggers. And then he's created this beautiful future here. When he wants to work with his family, he adores his children. The fingerprints that are here are part of a much larger emerging installation called Spot Time. And because it's anonymous, this installation, you have protection, so this exhibition, it helps take ownership, but also it's part of a much larger installation, which I've been emerging for 8.5 years, and it'll be finished in 10 years. Yeah. So he said here, bad joker man. So that's when his father's probably taking alcohol. And then good man, so Superman, that's when his father's probably had reduced alcohol. And then heart, mummy, the sun, it's full of hope, but recognising that there has been chaos in the family, but it's a family choosing to work together. And I think, this family wants to stay together. They want to work in a different way. The family wants to move through pain and learn to love again. And it's much better than possibly people not finding a level of communication and support, because often it can go on and on and on with new families and chaos, can't it? Yeah. And then this is another lady who came along that's in an abusive situation, and she's still living with her partner. He didn't want to interact, but she took her artwork home. And she did it at home. It's so beautiful. That's how she felt in the past. And she's emerging as her own person for freedom. And that's her future.
So this family is still together and they're still
Yes, they're still
out.
together. But she's concerned, I believe, about her eldest child. Because she's worried that these behaviours play out, if they're not addressed. Then it might... so that's why it's important to talk about the past, the present, and the future, and how we fit together within a family dynamic. Yeah. So, yeah, it's very interesting. And hermaphrodites is the union of Hermes and Aphrodite, and the healing and sin with their names. The union of both sexes. So, often hermaphroditus is depicted the union of both sexes, but also as a he. And I wanted it to be a transcendent figure, so there's no facial or whatever. So it's about reaching everyone to think in a really positive way about honouring yourself through adversity and connection. And abuse and domestic abuse and physical abuse, sadly, is very prevalent at the moment because of increased austerity, money concerns. People are hiding,
Stressed,
they're
anxiety
stressed.
induced.
They are, increased anxiety because of fear. They can't see a way forward. Even if you get degrees, you're very often, are there any jobs available? So I think people are feeling frightened, and so often when they're feeling frightened, they become quite abusive, or they'll drink more, and it affects families and it implodes. So that was the reason I contacted Living Without Abuse, and hopefully this painting will raise a lot of money for the charity. I'm hoping. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This one resonated the most with me, really.
What about it?
Well, it just felt like it was my situation.
So this particular poet and artist, so she's the artist who also did these pictures. She has just been delighted to be able to showcase her work. As somebody visiting, what is reading it mean to you?
It just feels like it just makes me go back to the situation I was in more than 30 years ago, and you know the words are what was happening to me, the controlling factor of it all.
And why do you think something like this is important to showcase in Leicester?
I think it's important to showcase it anywhere. I mean, it's, you know, I'm very glad that people are talking about domestic violence now, because when I was in that situation, people didn't talk about it, or they said things like, if I was in that situation, I would get out, and you know, and that was almost impossible for me. I had a child.
And what do you hope visitors coming in here will take away from this?
Maybe some understanding of what it's like to be in a situation of domestic violence. I mean, you know, I've listened to people saying, you know, that just isn't a true scenario when they've watched something like, well, particularly a scenario that was on Coronation Street about domestic violence. People in the staff room saying, well, that's just a load of rubbish. Why doesn't she just get out? And then me standing up and saying, well, nobody knew my situation because I hadn't said anything. I stood up and said, you know, if you haven't experienced something like that, you can't comment about it. And then I walked out to stunned silence. I can't remember what happened after that.
Hiya, I'm here with Paul, and I just want to ask you a few questions about your impressions as a male here at this art exhibition.
Well, my impression here, I mean, I've been at the exhibition now for several sessions, helped Emily set this up and get it running, and I think the normal sort of misconception is that domestic abuse and violence and coercive behavior is mostly coming from a male perspective to the female. But actually, I've been quite amazed at the amount of interaction and engagement there's been from men walking in ad hoc, and in particular, young men, 20-something, 30-something, that have engaged and spent time looking at the art and reading the poetry.
I was talking to Emily earlier, and she was saying 1 in 6 men experience domestic abuse at home, and you know, emotional abuse as well.
Yes,
as they go through.
It's significant, and actually, on occasion, some men have passed by Em and myself and just sort of commented about how amazing the art exhibition has been, and that it's opened their minds to the fact it's not just a male-female issue.
Have you had any males come in and told you about what emotions they've left with after reading the poems and seeing the art?
Yeah, I mean, there's one in particular. Interestingly, there was an elderly gentleman, somewhere in his 80s, and he spent a lot of time walking around and reading everything, and actually commented before he went, saying that actually, as a youngster, he was abused, and this is the first time that he's been able to read this sort of material and understand that it's something that he can start now opening up about it. And it's a gentleman in his 80s.
Right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.